Well, a few months later, it was not long after this MRI group was there, and Gemini Studios got yet another chance to welcome poet from England. People made guesses about who was going to visit this time because most people knew few poets, like they were familiar with Wordsworth or Tennyson, or enthusiasts known knew about Keats, Shelley, Byron, or even Eliot. But they were curious as to who was the one visiting Gemini Studios. Well, the curiosity and excitement kept on growing. The person about to visit Gemini Studios was not a poet but an editor of a newspaper daily. Thus, the boss was planning on giving a huge welcome. Even Vasan was the editor of a famous Tamil publication titled Anand Viktan. So, there were many famous publishing houses in Madras that had been set up by the British, which everyone at Gemini Studios knew about. The highest level of managers at Hindu were involved, which meant that the editor was a prominent personality. The staff at Gemini only knew of two newspapers, the Manchester Guardian and London Times. The man was not the editor of either of two. At last, the guest finally arrived at 4 in the afternoon. He was tall, had a serious looking British face, which was unknown to almost all of them. Boss welcomed him with a speech, and the speech was evident of the fact he knew about him just as little as the others did. And the speech was general, but he could not help but hear words like freedom, democracy. Then it was time for the poet to enlighten the audience. But unfortunately, you know, his British accent left everyone bewildered. The visitor was just as confused. People could not understand reason why a British poet was there at studio that made Tamil films, and in between, people could not afford to develop a taste for English poetry. His visit was indeed a mystery, and that too unexplained mystery. Well, students, Ashoka Mitran, what he feels that writing cannot be performed by intelligence because it's the task of those who are patient and can do the hard work. A writer could have any feelings, not be bogged down by rejection, must be able to prepare a lengthy prose, mail it to editor along with a stamped envelope for return of a manuscript. For such writers, the Hindu had advertised that there was a short story contest organized by a British publication by the name of Encounter. And the writers at Gemini Studios had not heard of the name. Ashoka Mitran wanted to know about it before he decided to spend money on mailing his entry and sending it to all the way to England. He visited British Council Library, and in those days the entrance of the library was simple, without signboards, notice. No one felt as if they were entering restricted area. At the library he saw many copies of Encounter. The editor's name rung a bell in Ashoka Mitran's heart, and the name of the editor was Stephen Spender. And many years later, when the writer left Gemini Studios, he had plenty of free time but not much money. So he often looked out for discounted goods. On a sale attracted him once he came across books being sold on footpath outside post office located on the location was Madras Mount Road, right? And they were termed as a student edition and thus were offered at a very low price. They were celebrating 15th anniversary of Russian Revolution. The writers were Andre Gide, Richard Wright, Indanzo Ceylon, Arthur Koestler, Louis Fisher, and Stephen Spender. a writer read C. Stephen Spender's name, and again he got to see this poet's name again. As a writer read the book became important for him because he had visited Gemini Studios. He was reminded of him, and the name sounded familiar. Ashoka Mitran thought that boss at this Gemini Studios may not be considered may not be concerned with Spender's poetry, but definitely his. So we can say that maybe boss was not very much interested in his poetry, but maybe he had some interest in communalism or the journey which Stephen Spender took. Like he was inclined toward communalism, and then he got highly disappointed and walked out of it. And he had narrated his experience in his book, The God That Failed. And not only him, there were 6 other eminent writers who had written about their experience, like being a communist and then being disillusioned. And so this mystery of having this English poet in Gemini Studios was somehow solved. So students, this was a detailed explanation of this chapter, Poets and Pancakes. I hope you have understood the chapter, and one more reading on your own will also help you to understand like what actually this author wants to say, like giving us insight of the life of different characters who were working in these 2 important departments. One department was makeup and another was story writing, and number of incidences which took place in Gemini Studio. Thank you and happy learning.